Kurt Busch has still not been cleared to race, but hopes to return in 2023. Multiple drivers could be candidates for the number 4 car in 2024, and Alex Bowman is unlikely to leave Hendrick Motorsports after 2023. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to start by talking about Speedy Cash, as it was announced on Friday that Speedy Cash will be returning to sponsor Front Row in 2023. They will sponsor Todd Gillen for 6 races, and they will sponsor Zane Smith at Texas. Really great to see that Speedy Cash will continue to work with Front Row Motorsports. They've been sponsoring that team, I believe, since 2019 or 2020. So excited to see that the company will continue working with them in 2023 and sponsor them for multiple races. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Detroit Grand Prix, as they have a new logo for the upcoming Detroit Grand Prix as they move back to the streets of Detroit. This is a really exciting looking logo, in my opinion. Very simplistic, but I think the logo looks really exciting. And I cannot wait for the new Detroit Grand Prix. It's going to be exciting. Looking forward to it. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Bass Pro Shops. As it was announced on Friday that they are going to be returning to sponsor Austin Dillon in 2023 in a multi-race deal. The number of races was not officially announced for how many they're going to run, but I believe they're going to sponsor Austin Dillon in the Daytona 500. We'll see what other races they decide to run. But great to see that Bass Pro Shops is going to continue working with Austin Dillon in 2023. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Ryan Prix, as a couple of Ryan Prix' sponsors have been revealed for 2023. United Rentals is one of the sponsors we kind of knew this was coming, but United Rentals is going to sponsor Ryan Prix in many races, including in the Busch Light Clash. And Haas Automation, the first race they'll sponsor Ryan Prix, will be in the Daytona 500. There's probably going to be other companies that are going to sponsor Ryan Prix throughout the 2023 season, but it's good to see that those companies for sure are going to sponsor him in 2023, and happy to see that they are going to be returning. Glad to see that they're returning in 2023. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Arma. As basically, for those who do not know, Arma has been basically one of the sponsors of the Horizon Hobby, sponsors as part of the Horizon Hobby Group. And Arma is going to have a number 34 Horizon replica body that is going to be available in stores. We kind of saw this body at the Daytona International Speedway. Basically, there was this Horizon sponsorship that Michael McDowell ran, and they are going to sponsor them in the number 34 car, and they were going to continue their sponsorship this year, and they're going to be basically on 6S Infraction. 6S Infraction is one of the fastest RC cars in the world, and I think this is such a really cool initiative. My family's been in the hobby business for a very long time, so I think this is a really cool initiative that they are doing going into 2023, and I'm happy that this is going to be available. I'm definitely might have to get one of those for myself. I think it looks really awesome, and it looks really cool, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the Busch Light Clash. As Adam Stern tweeted, I believe a couple days ago on Saturday, that a signage and sponsorship is going up. We are less than 2 weeks away from the Busch Light Clash. In fact, we're 13 days from today, as a matter of fact, from the Busch Light Clash happening. The track's already ready to go. They're just getting the final touches down. And then in a couple weeks from now, we're going to be racing in Los Angeles to kick off the 2023 season. This season is hyping up to be one of the best NASCAR seasons we've ever seen. I'm getting really excited, really pumped up for that, and glad to see that the signage is up, because as a fan, I'm looking forward to it and excited for the 2023 season. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Ken Block. Now, we do have a couple Ken Block stories to talk about we're going to put in this section. First, the Nitro Rallycross, I believe that's the series, is going to be retiring the number 43 number, which I think is really cool that they are doing that. Next, Ford is going to honor Ken Block with decals, like all their Ford drivers are going to honor Ken Block throughout the season with Ken Block decals. I think that's exciting that Ford is doing that. Of course, Ken Block's had a big association with Ford for basically a lot of his career when he did race. So amazing that they're going to be doing that for sure. I think that is really cool that they're going to be basically honoring Ken Block, one of the greatest race car drivers to ever grace the world of racing. I think it's very exciting, really phenomenal, and glad to see that they are going to be doing that and giving tribute to Ken Block. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Tyler Reddick. As it looks like Tyler Reddick's 2023 sponsors, or some of his sponsors, have been revealed. Some of these sponsors include McDonald's, Moneyline, Monster, 2K, and Toyota will probably be some of the sponsorship that Tyler Reddick has on his car throughout the 2023 season. I'm not surprised. Monster Energy, we kind of already knew was going to be a sponsor for Tyler Reddick. He's got a Monster Energy fire suit, so Monster Energy will have more drivers in 2023. So it's good to see his sponsors have been revealed because a lot of people worry about what sponsorship Tyler Reddick was going to have. So I'm glad to see we've got some of the sponsors known at this point for Tyler Reddick going into the season. Glad to see that. Very happy to see that Reddick sponsors have been revealed. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Caleb Williams. As it was announced last night during the NFC divisional game that Caleb Williams is going to wave the green flag at the Busch Light Clash. Caleb Williams, who is a Heisman Trophy winner, I believe, from 2022, will be the one doing that. I think it's really great that Caleb is going to be doing that. Of course, we still don't know who's going to be in the broadcast booth for Fox at this point, but I think it's really cool to see that Caleb Williams is going to wave the green flag. I think that's really great news. Really exciting to see, and glad to see that he will be waving the green flag because he was a Heisman Trophy winner, and glad to see that he will be waving the green flag. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Formula One. Now, it was reported by Adam Stern a couple days ago that Saudi Arabia's Sovereign Wealth Fund reportedly tried to buy F1 from Liberty Media last year and valued the series at more than $20 billion, but were rebuffed by the American company. This doesn't surprise or shock me. F1's been trying to get more of a presence in Saudi Arabia, and it's not a major shock that the Saudi Arabians are basically trying to buy up Formula One. It was basically worth $20 billion. So, again, I'm not really shocked or surprised that they're trying to basically buy that up at this point for that much money. Again, there's still a possibility that this could happen. Nothing's out of the realm of possibility, but I'm not surprised that they were trying to do this. I think if they could have done it, it would have been really, really huge, even though I think Liberty Media has done a really good job getting American presence. It probably would hurt the chance of America staying in Formula One long term. That being said, though, I am glad to see that they are not going to be leaving Formula One. They're going to be staying, and I'm glad to see that this is still going to be continuing. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Christopher Bell. As it was announced on Saturday that Christopher Bell is going to be forming an open-wheel team called Bell Kemenot Racing. This team that he and Chad Kemenot are going to be owning. I believe that Gavin Buescher will be one of the drivers in the first race that they are going to run as at Volusia. Christopher Bell, of course, has been associated with the open wheel world and basically racing in, sprint cars and stuff for many, many years. Not a shock that he's going to be owning a team. We've seen a lot of NASCAR drivers and other teams get involved in being team owners in the sport. So this does not surprise or shock me in any sort of slightest that we're going to be seeing an open wheel team that Christopher Bell is going to own. Wishing the team the best of luck. Hope they can have a very successful season, and we'll see what they can end up doing in 2023, and we'll see if they can end up being successful in open wheel racing. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Meyer Shank Racing. Now, yesterday was the Royal for the 24 qualifying to determine who will win the pole for the Rolex 24, and Meyer Shank Racing has won the pole for the 2023 Rolex 24. In the new GTP class, which is going to debut in 2023, they will have an opportunity to go out there and try to win their first ever. They will be looking to win their second straight Rolex 24. Tom Blomqvist put up a very, very strong lap. That's really helping the team and is going to help the team have an opportunity to be really competitive in that. Congratulations to Meyer Shank Racing, a very big lap. Tom Blomqvist put up a great lap. And congratulations on Meyer Shank Racing on picking up the pole for the 2023 Rolex 24 at Daytona. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Chandler Smith. As Chandler Smith has officially been approved to be part of the Xfinity Series Rookie of the Year class. He will be going up against Sammy Smith and Parker Retzlaff for the Xfinity Series Rookie of the Year class. Initially, he was not eligible for the Rookie of the Year class, but Colleague basically in the last week got approval for him to be part of the Rookie of the Year class. I think it's going to be a really strong Rookie of the Year class for the Xfinity Series. I think it could go any way. I know that Parker Retzlaff probably is going to finish third. I think both the Smiths are going to be the main guys that are contenders for that Rookie of the Year class. But it's going to be really exciting regardless for this year's Rookie of the Year class that is coming up. If you're a fan, you should be really, really excited, and we'll see how it goes. But I think it'll come down between both the Smiths for the Rookie of the Year class in 2023. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Jimmie Johnson. Now we're going to talk about the NASCAR Hall of Fame for 2023 here in just a little bit, but as reported by Bob Pockrass, I believe on Friday, the nominating committee meets in February and will decide if Johnson is eligible for the 2024 class. One of the reasons that they're going to be meeting next month is because Jimmie Johnson is, of course, returning in 2023 to race in a couple like NASCAR Cup Series races, including in the Daytona 500. He also is a co-owner of the new Legacy Motor Club, which is formerly Petty GMS. I would think that Jimmie Johnson is going to get approved. I think they're going to end up approving it just because him and Chad Canals are likely going to be the two people that get inducted in 2024. I don't think it would be a good look for them to not let them be inducted in 2024, but that's just my opinion. It'll all come down to what NASCAR decides to do, but if you want my honest opinion, I think NASCAR will go ahead and approve them. It comes down to, like I said, it comes down to NASCAR decision if they want to approve them or not. But if you want my opinion, I think they will end up approving them, considering they're two of the greatest people in NASCAR history. I would have to think that they are going to get approved, but I've seen crazier things happen, and we'll see what happens. But I think they will end up getting approved, but we'll see what happens. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kasey Kahne. As it was announced on Friday morning that Kasey Kahne is returning full-time to the World of Outlaws in 2023, driving the 9 car for his own organization. Kasey Kahne ran full-time in the World of Outlaws in 2022. Of course, Kasey Kahne, a NASCAR Cup Series, former NASCAR Cup Series driver, won a lot of NASCAR Cup Series races, and also has raced in World of Outlaws basically off and on for years until last year where he ran full-time. Kasey Kahne, I think, will be very, very competitive. I wouldn't be surprised if he wins a race or two this upcoming season in the World of Outlaws in 2023. He's been having a lot of fun with that. I think he's going to be really, really competitive. I think he's going to be really, really fast, and I think that Kasey Kahne could have a really strong chance and a really good opportunity to win. I think Kasey Kahne will be a contender, and we'll see what he does. Happy to see, though, that he will be in the 9 car for the World of Outlaws once again in 2023. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Jimmie Johnson. Now, of course, this upcoming week at Phoenix, which is, I believe, going to be starting either today or tomorrow, there is going to be the next-gen test at Phoenix where they'll be testing some short-track packages. Jimmie Johnson's test originally, I believe, was going to be Wednesday. Now it's going to end up being tomorrow on Tuesday. Jimmy's going to have his own elite driver's test where he basically will be on the track on his own schedule. This happened for Kimi Räikkönen earlier last year when he was able to make a select start at Watkins Glen for Trackhouse Racing. Now Jimmie Johnson will be able to have that test. It's going to be interesting to see what Jimmie Johnson is going to do. Of course, like I've already mentioned this episode, Jimmie Johnson is going to run a select few races in 2023. And also, speaking of which, let's talk about Travis Pastrana for a second. Travis Pastrana, we don't know when his test is going to be. It's going to be soon, though, because we're less than a month away from the Daytona 500. I would have to think his test will be out there to Super Speedway, maybe a short track like Phoenix. Who knows at this point, but if you're a Jimmie Johnson fan, that test is going to be at Phoenix this upcoming Tuesday, and I definitely wonder if it's going to be streamed or not. We don't know that at this point, but Jimmy's test is going to be on Tuesday. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the 2023 NASCAR Hall of Fame class. As on Friday, the 2023 NASCAR Hall of Fame class was inducted. Matt Kenseth, Herschel McGriff, and Kirk Shelmerdine were inducted on Friday. Huge congratulations to those three on getting inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame for 2023. I think all three are deserving. Matt Kenseth, of course, NASCAR Cup Series champion, many time winner in the Cup Series, and successful for many, many years. He definitely deserves to be in there. Herschel McGriff, legend of racing, basically 90 years old, but he was basically racing at 90 years of age, which is absolutely incredible. I remember when he did it, I think it was at ARCA West race when they was to be called the Kane Pro West race back in 2015. And then Kirk Shelmerdine, legendary crew chief, made some starts in NASCAR in his own way. And just seeing all three get inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame is absolutely amazing and incredible. So congratulations to those three and getting inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame. I think it's awesome. I think it's amazing to see. And like I said, massive congratulations to those three on getting inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame. They absolutely deserve it. And congratulations to them on getting inducted into the Hall of Fame. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ricky Taylor. As it was reported by Racer.com yesterday that Ricky Taylor will be able to have an IndyCar test with Andretti Autosport in 2023. Now, why is Ricky Taylor going to get a test with Andretti? Well, the big reason why he's going to be able to have an IndyCar test is because, remember, Michael Andretti is now a part owner of Wayne Taylor Racing. Andretti Autosport is officially associated with that team now. So that's one of the big reasons why Ricky Taylor is going to get an opportunity to have an IndyCar test with the team. Now, I believe Ricky Taylor has had IndyCar tests in the past, but he's not been able to have an opportunity to race IndyCar at this point. If that test goes well, imagine if he gets a start for that team, and maybe he gets started maybe to run the Indy 500 in the future. I think that'd be exciting. Ricky Taylor is one of the best drivers in the history of IMSA, so that would be exciting if he got an opportunity to race in IndyCar and got an opportunity to race there full time. I don't think he'll get an opportunity to run full time, but I think it would be exciting regardless if he did get that opportunity. So I think that's really, really cool. Very, very exciting nonetheless, and cool to see that Ricky Taylor is going to get an opportunity to have an IndyCar test. I think that's really exciting. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Riley Herbst. As we're talking about a rumor in regards to Riley Herbst. Now, it was reported on NASCAR on Reddit that apparently Riley Herbst might be driving the 15 for Rickware Racing in all of the super speedway races. Again, this just is a NASCAR Reddit rumor, so you can't take everything 100% seriously. Sometimes the stuff that's posted on Reddit does not end up coming true. But this is a rumor currently at the moment. Now, why could this end up happening? Well, Riley Herbst, of course, there's a lot of talk about his future with Stewart-Haas Racing, but I'm very interested by this because Rickware Racing no longer is associated with Stewart-Haas Racing. They no longer have an alliance with that team. Rickware now has an alliance with RFK, so that's a little surprising that Riley would get an opportunity. I would think if there would be anyone to get an opportunity to drive the super speed races, it'd be drivers with the RFK team. That's why I'm a little surprised that David Reagan may not be getting starts. Again, this just is not confirmed at this point, so you have to take this stuff with a grain of salt. But if Riley Herbst truly does drive for Rickware Racing in the Daytona 500, that is definitely going to be interesting, and it would be another Monster Energy car on the racetrack because Monster Energy, of course, has backed Riley Herbst throughout his career. So that would be very interesting for sure if this does end up officially coming true that he does end up driving this car. We're just going to have to wait and see what happens if this does end up coming true or not, but it does sound like that this could be a pretty high possibility that Riley Herbst might be driving the 15 car for Rickware Racing in all of the super speedway races. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the 2023 Daytona 500 entry list. Now, we've talked about the 2023 Daytona 500 entry list in separate videos, and there's probably going to be one more Daytona 500 entry list on my channel before the season begins. But there are some possibilities that could still end up happening for the 2023 Daytona 500. In the interest, I saw the number 35 for Zane Smith and not the number 36 for Zane Smith. Zane Smith obviously is going to run the Daytona 500 in 2023 with Front Row Motorsports. Sounds like the number 35 could be that number. Next, the number 27 Team Haysbert car is still listed as a possibility, so it sounds like there may only be one Team Haysbert car and not two Team Haysbert cars. Next, the 44 NY Racing. This one, I was a little bit surprised they're still on the entry list. I wonder maybe if Matt DiBenedetto could get an opportunity in that car. Maybe Greg Biffle makes a return. If Greg Biffle makes a return, that'd be very interesting. And then finally, the money team is still listed on there, and a lot of talk is that Julio Castroneves will be the driver of that car if they do end up showing up. Again, we still don't know if they're going to officially show up or not in the 2023 Daytona 500, but it sounds like it still could be a pretty high possibility that they could still show up in the 2023 Daytona 500. But there's so many interesting entry lists, and it's supported by J-Ski, and things are going to continue to change as we get closer to the start of the season, but it sounds like this could still be a very high possibility that we could see all these teams enter the 2023 Daytona 500. I'm getting excited for the season. We're getting really close to the start, and I'm definitely nonetheless getting very excited for the start of the 2023 season. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Travis Pastrana. Now, it was reported by Jordan Bianchi, who was, of course, on the podcast that he runs with Jeff Gluck. They were on the podcast and basically says that Travis Pastrana is hoping to run more races than the Daytona 500 in 2023. This is going to be very, very interesting that Travis Pastrana is interested in maybe running some more races than the Daytona 500. And very shocked about this because you would think that Travis Pastrana only wants to run the Daytona 500. But at the end of the day, if he wants to run more races, that's really cool because it means that 67 car, which is the third 2311 racing car, wants to come back and run more. I would have to think that he would run Las Vegas. He's ran a lot of races in Las Vegas, so he probably would run that race. I would have to think maybe he runs the Coke 600 perhaps, if that becomes possible. Maybe he runs at Indianapolis, runs the Indy Road Course race. that could be a really high possibility. But I think it's definitely interesting regardless that Travis Pastrana is interested in running to run more races than just the Daytona 500 because you think maybe he wants to only run that race. But regardless, so I think it's really interesting and exciting regardless if Travis Pastrana is showing interest and maybe wanting to run more races because it means that we would have more possibility of having full fields, which, again, I would love to have more full fields in this series. I think that'd be really fun and just very interesting for sure, and we'll have to see what happens in regards to that, but it sounds like we could potentially see more races run with that car. I think it's really, really exciting, really, really great and fantastic to see, and happy to see that Travis Pastrana is showing some interest and wanting to run some more races. I think it'd be great for the sport if he could be very successful, and we'll see if Travis Pastrana does decide to make some starts in NASCAR after Daytona 500 with 2311. I would think it would be just with 2311 racing, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. I hope he does run more races, though. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Brad Perez. As it was just announced a few minutes ago that Brad Perez is going to drive the 35 for Hendrick Motorsports for 4 races in 2023. His first race is going to be COTA. Actually, the number has not been revealed and the rest schedule has not been revealed at this time, but his first race will be a COTA and he will run 4 races in 2023. This is really exciting news. Brad Perez made a few select starts that Brad Mann did last year for the team and actually was pretty solid, had some good pace and some good speed, and he's a very solid road course racer as well, and I think he's going to do not only a really good job, but I think he's going to do a stellar job in 2023. This is really great to see. Happy he's getting an opportunity. I think the goal is for them to make the show, and if they can do that, I think especially of how chaotic these road course races can be at times, I think he finished in the top 20 or the top 25. He's got the skills to do it. He's been working really hard to get these opportunities. I hope he does go full-time in the long-term future, but I'm excited to see what he can do, and I think he'll do a really, really stellar and a really good job in this car. So wishing him the best of luck and excited to see that he's going to get an opportunity to drive this car for a few select races in 2023. I think he's going to do a really good and awesome job with the team this upcoming season. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Justin Haley. As it was announced on Friday that Justin Haley is going to drive the 10 for College Racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in select races in 2023. His first race is going to be at Daytona, and this will be now an all-star car. Obviously, it was reported back, I believe, on Wednesday, and we talked about this on the channel last Wednesday, that Landon Castle will not be driving the 10 car full-time. So College Racing is going to run an all-star car. Now, like I mentioned, it was not listed how many races Justin Haley is going to run. My assumption is he's going to run all the super speedway-like races, that being Daytona, Talladega, and Atlanta, are probably all the races that Justin Haley is going to run. So he'll run those select races in 2023. I would have to think that other drivers could have an opportunity to drive this car. I would think that A.J. Allmendinger is going to drive this car as well at some point, considering he's been with McCall Racing for a long time now. I would think he would drive this car. And I would also think that maybe Kyle Busch comes out of retirement to drive the 10 for College Racing. This could be a possibility. I know Kyle Busch has said that he has been retired now from this series, but would have to imagine that Kyle Busch may come out of retirement. There's some people think that there could be a possibility that this could happen now. And this could be a possibility. Now, Kyle Busch could also drive for RCR and Xfinity. That could be a potential possibility that ends up happening. But regardless of what ends up happening, I'm excited to see some of these guys are going to race. And for those wondering about Landon Castle, I think there is still a shot and a possibility that we could see Landon Castle drive this car. I don't think anything's out of the realm possibility at this point of him still driving in a few select races. But I don't think he'll be full-time with any team this year, unfortunately. And again, that's just due to that Voyager sponsorship going through the realm. And College really had no choice at this point but go after Cup Series drivers to run. Other drivers could get an opportunity. I could end up maybe seeing Ty Dillon get an opportunity. He's with Spire now, but I would think that he could get an opportunity to drive this car. Austin Dillon could have an opportunity to drive this car at some point. I think there's a lot of drivers who could get a shot and an opportunity to drive this car this season. Regardless, so I'm excited to see what Justin Haley can do. I think he'll do a good job, and I think you have to put him as the favorite to win this race. College Racing Super Speedway program is extremely strong, and I think that College has a very strong chance and a possibility of going out there and winning this race. And I think Justin Haley, if you're going to be picking for a winner at Daytona and Xfinity race, you've got to go with Justin Haley to win that one. So Justin Haley's my early pick to win the Xfinity Series race for College at Daytona, but we'll see what happens. Glad to see he'll get an opportunity, though, to make some more starts this year. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Busch. Now, it was reported by Adam Stern on Friday evening that Ewers reports that Kyle Busch says, "My actions are a product of the circumstances and what all goes down. All sports need some entertainment, some excitement, and I've been that guy all for a little bit. This hat's black for a reason. We'll keep rolling." I love Kyle Busch having all this confidence and talking himself up, and I really, really love this. And he really wants to be that black sheep and that person that really show a lot of people. Kyle Busch is ready to play that villainous role, and I'm really looking forward to him being able to play that villainous role going into this year. And when Kyle Busch is in this mood where he's got a lot of excitement and is really excited going into the year, he is an extremely dangerous driver. A driver like Kyle Busch, when he's motivated, is extremely dangerous on the racetrack. And I think the field should be really, really scared right now. Every time Kyle Busch has been motivated, look back when he joined Joe Gibbs Racing in 2008. No one thought he was going to do anything going to that 18 car. Goes on to win 8 races. I know there was a collapse near the end of the year, but he ended up winning 8 races. 2015, coming back from his injury after the crash at Daytona, goes on to win 5 races and wins the championship. 2019, goes on to win win the Cup Series championship. Kyle Busch is going to be motivated this year, and a motivated Kyle Busch, because he's going to have good equipment this year, is dangerous. That 8-car last year as well scored a ton of wins last year. 3 victories last year. Reddick could have won 6 or 7 races easily last year. And I think Kyle Busch is going to be able to get the best. I think this is going to be the best season that Kyle Busch has had in the last few years. And he's got sponsorship funding, unlike at Joe Gibbs Racing. He's got sponsorship funding that are willing to work him. Yes, I know there's a lot of those companies are RCR associated, but he actually got a legitimate sponsor that is going to work with him this season. So it's really exciting to see for sure what's going to happen. And I've really become a Kyle Busch fan over the last few years. And as a Kyle Busch fan, I'm so excited. And I'm looking forward to this season for Kyle Busch. But he's going to be really dangerous this year. I think he makes the championship 4. And you never know, he may go out and win that championship. You've got Kyle Busch, one of the greatest NASCAR drivers ever, and Randall Burnett, who I think right now is one of the best crew chiefs in the garage at the moment. And I think that this is going to be an extremely dangerous combination going into the 2023 season. So I'm excited for sure. Really looking forward to see what Kyle Busch is going to do. He's motivated, he's confident, and he's really ready, and he's hungry to go and win. And I think that is really dangerous, Kyle Busch. And it's a really exciting time for Kyle Busch fans because he is motivated, and that's a really dangerous Kyle Busch. We'll see what happens. I think Kyle Busch is motivated, and I think he's going to be very successful this season. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Tyler Reddick. As it was just announced this morning, Tyler Reddick is going to be driving to 24 for Sam Hunt Racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. His first race is going to be at Auto Club. It was not announced how many races he's going to run, but Bob Poggers noted this morning that Tyler Reddick can only run 5 races in 2023 in the Xfinity Series. It was already announced that Connor Mosack is going to drive this car for 20 races, so he will probably run all 5 races that he is allowed to run since this is the 3rd year that he is in the series on a full-time basis now. He will, with the 3rd or 4th year has been the Xfinity Cup Series now, he will basically have only a few races that he's able to run. Now, let's talk about Tyler Reddick's chances of winning. Is Sam Hunt Racing the fastest team in the world? No. Sam Hunt Racing is probably a 10th to 15th place team. But Tyler Reddick can always get the best out of the equipment. And I think Sam Hunt Racing this year compared to last year, they are going to be a much faster organization. You've got Kaz Gralla joining the team, which I think he is going to be a contender to win races on road courses and other types of tracks. We've seen what Kaz Gralla can do when he's given really solid equipment. He can always outperform the equipment he's in. And I think Tyler Reddick is going to be a contender to win at all the races he's in. I think it's really going to come down between him and Cole Custer at that race at Auto Club, which between those two drivers, that is going to be a really strong battle. They've battled against each other over the years. You go back to 2019, I think, at Pocono, where they battled each other for the win. So I think Reddick's going to be competitive. I think Reddick gets 1 or 2 Xfinity Series wins this year in that car. I think he does, especially if he runs a road course race, which I think Connor Mosack's going to run all the road course races this year. We'll see what other races Reddick decides to run, but I think he is going to be extremely competitive, and I think the Xfinity Series just got a little more exciting for 2023. So I'm excited to see what Tyler Reddick can do. Like I said, I expect Reddick to be extremely competitive in those select races. I think that Sam Hunt Racing is going to be a much stronger organization. They've shown winning speed at times. Last year, John Hunter Nemechek, I think, was at Phoenix. He was out there competing for victories in that car at select times. Darlington, he was up front in the fall race or the spring race. And I think that you're going to see Ty Reddick be really competitive this year. He'll be a contender with 2311, and he'll be a contender with Sam Hunt Racing in the Xfinity Series. I think he'll do a really good job, and I'm excited to see what Ty Reddick can do in the select races. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next major story of today's episode as we're talking about Alex Bowman. Now, Austin Konensky put out a report, of course, who works at Sportsnet, put out a report talking about Alex Bowman. And he basically reports that Alex Bowman is unlikely to leave Hendrick Motorsports after 2023. Now, Jordan Bianchi on the Athletics podcast, the Teardown, he basically said that Alex Bowman is unlikely to leave Hendrick Motorsports because Ally is really satisfied, Hendrick is really satisfied with the performance from Alex Bowman. And Alex Bowman has said publicly in recent weeks that he's very satisfied and excited, and basically says that they're beginning talking about contracts and getting that contract extended. Now, this is really good news if you're Alex Bowman fan, because this is a big year going into 2023. Alex Bowman, of course, is going to have a new crew chief in 2023. Blake Harris jumps away from Front Row Motorsports and will be joining this year as a crew chief for Alex Bowman. If you're an Alex Bowman fan, you should be really excited about this because I think Blake Harris is actually one of the best crew chiefs in the garage currently at the moment. Now, like I said, this is a big year because this is a contract year for Alex Bowman. But it's good to hear from an insider, someone who works in the industry, saying, it's very likely that we're going to see Alex Bowman return to Hendrick Motorsports. Now, the big question for Alex Bowman is how long will this extension be for Alex Bowman if it does end up happening? I would think it will only be a 2 or 3 year extension, but Bowman right now is the only driver Hendrick Motorsports that really doesn't have a major future pass at the moment. 2023. Of course, William Byron has a contract through 2025, but he's got to start stepping up his performances. Of course, Chase Elliott has a contract through 2027, and Kyle Larson has a contract through 2026. Regardless, though, when it comes to this, it's good to see that he's likely going to return to the team, but things can change really quickly. If Ally, though, decides to change their mind and they decide to go ahead and switch and shift their gears on what's exactly they're going to do, that could really change the way there. The only thing that will keep Bowman staying long-term from Hendrick Motorsports away from him staying at the team basically is all going to come down to the Ally sponsorship, because that's a really big key thing that's keeping Alex Bowman in that car, because Bowman deserves that car, in my opinion. He's performed really, really good. I know some people would disagree, but Bowman has done a really good job in that 48 car over the years, and I think he's going to perform solid. I think he still, unfortunately, missed the playoffs, and I think he's going to have like a Martin Truex Jr. style season where he runs very consistent, runs top 5 in points, but he ain't going to win till later in the year, and I think you're going to have to win a race. But regardless, I think he's going to have a really good year, and I think he will return to Hendrick Motorsports in 2024. I think he gets a 2 or 3 year extension, and Hendrick will keep the brigade long-term. I think Hendrick wants to keep all their drivers long-term, and I think Bowman will get a long-term extension with the team and will stay at the team. If he doesn't return, I would think SHR could be a possibility, but I think Bowman stays long-term with Hendrick Motorsports. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of 2 major stories of today's episode, as we're talking about the number 4 car for 2024. Now, in 2024, the 4 car is going to be open at Stewart-Haas Racing because Kevin Harvick at the end of the 2023 season is going to retire after 23 very successful NASCAR Cup Series seasons. He's already won a Cup Series championship in 2014, 60 Cup victories, and of course has won every crown jewel that you can win. The big question is going to come down to who will be getting the car in 2024. And there's a lot of drivers who are candidates currently at the moment. As Jordan Bianchi reported on the Teardown, he says there are a lot of candidates. The first one is Ross Chastain. Now, Ross Chastain currently has a 1-year deal with Trackhouse Racing, but he feels confident that he could end up staying at Trackhouse Racing past 2023. It all depends if Trackhouse wants to continue with them. I'm confident saying, though, likely that Chastain will probably return to Trackhouse Racing, but he would be a big potential possibility if they decide to get rid of him, which would be a bad blow to Trackhouse Racing, which would be a really bad decision, which would probably be the first bad decision that Trackhouse has made since joining the Cup Series in the last few years. Chastain's a potential free agent. Next one is Eric Jones. This one actually surprised me because Eric Jones, I thought, had a multi-year deal, which he does have a multi-year deal with this team. However, There's a lot of talk that Focus Factor is no longer sponsoring Petty GM, Legacy Motor Club. So if they don't return, could this mean the end of Eric Jones's deal? That could be a possibility, but I'm confident saying that I think he'll return, but he could be a candidate. Next one is Cole Custer. Cole Custer currently drives in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in the 00 car for the team. He could be a possibility for the 4 car to move up. I think Custer has a good chance of getting back the Cup, especially if his performance in Xfinity goes well, which I think it is going to go well this year. I think he's going to do a really strong job at that team, so I expect him to be a contender for that car. Another driver, John Hunter Nemechek. This one actually surprised me, but remember, we talked about this on the channel. Corey LaJoie said on the Stacking Pennies podcast that John Hunter Nemechek had actually been a candidate for the 10 car for this year initially because Eric Almirola was going to retire at the end of 2022, but Eric Almirola made a return for 2023. So this could be a possibility, and John Hunter would be a really good driver. He's got some sponsorship funding, so it could be possible that John Hunter could be a candidate. Next one is Riley Herbst. Riley Herbst currently, I think he's going to be a potential candidate for that ride. He's got that Monster Energy backing. There's talk he's going to try to run the Daytona 500, so this could be a possible option. Then you've got Zane Smith as another possible option for this. Zane Smith is in the Ford program, and he's got front row deal. He's going to run some select cup starts. He could be a possibility for the 4 car. And then Michael McDowell was also mentioned in the article. Michael McDowell is also, I think, a good possibility. He's a veteran and does have some sponsorship with him. But again, I think he'll return. Another name that was not mentioned in the article that has to be a consideration potentially is Hailie Deegan. I know people are going to cringe when I say that, but Hailie Deegan could be a possibility. Ford might want to move her all the way up the Cup. She's got that Monster Energy backing and sponsorship, so she could be a very possible candidate for that ride, and she could get an opportunity to drive the 4, but I would think it would be a bad call for them to move her up. So who do I think is going to get in the 4 car? I don't think it's going to be any drivers I mentioned. I think it's going to be Ryan Preece. I think Ryan Preece is actually going to move to the 4 car in 2024, and here's why I think Ryan Preece will get moved to that car. Ryan Preece is already in Stewart-Haas Racing's Cup Series program, 41 car, and he's a KHI managed driver, so he easily would be able to be moved around really quickly. And I think Cole Custer goes to the 41 car as well. I think that's where Custer goes back to, but I think that we're going to see Ryan Preece move to the 4 car. I think that's what Stewart-Haas Racing ends up doing next year. I think Preece will get to the 4 car. He's got some of that sponsorship and funding. The big thing will be Busch, because Busch is unclear if Busch is going to return past 2023, because a big reason why Busch is so with Stewart-Haas Racing is Kevin Harvick. So I'd have to think that is something that we're going to have to watch and wait and see. But I think at this point, if you want my honest opinion, I think that they are going to move Ryan Preece over to the 4 car next season. We'll see what happens with this car. Anything's possible and nothing is guaranteed, but it's very possible that we could see some changes to that team. We're just going to have to wait and see what happens, though. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Kurt Busch. Now, Kurt Busch is speaking to basically at the NASCAR Hall of Fame banquet. He was asked questions about has he been cleared to race and will he return in 2023. Kurt Busch is speaking and he says that he has still not been approved at this point to return for 2023. But he says that he hopes to return and make some starts in 2023 with 2311 Racing. Kurt Busch obviously will not be racing full-time in 2023 as Kurt Busch has suffered some concussion-like symptoms and has been out for a long time. It is really concerning, though, that Kurt Busch has still not been approved to race. He's basically suffered those injuries back in July of last year at Pocono, of course, after a really, really bad wreck. Yes, there was a lot of wrecks that kind of really played a role in, unfortunately, having those concussion-like symptoms. He had a crash at Atlanta earlier. He had a crash at Talladega, and he also had a crash, I believe, in the Daytona 500 as well. That unfortunately caused someone, I think, really kind of played a role in him, unfortunately, getting those concussion-like symptoms. Also, the car is not as safe. NASCAR's been working on making some of those safety talks. But it's a little bit concerning that he has not been approved. But Kurt wants to return in 2023 and easily has a path to get back to the Cup Series in 2023, and that is driving that number 67 car. The 67 car, of course, is going to be a third 2311 racing car. Travis Pastrana is going to run at least the Daytona 500, and as I noted early in this episode, it is very possible that we could see more drivers in that car later this year. That is a very big possibility. We may see more drivers driving that car this year. Maybe Sammy Smith. Maybe somehow they get Carl Edwards out of retirement, because we all thought maybe Carl Edwards was going to return, but that's not the case at this point. Maybe we'll see other drivers like a John Hunter Nemechek get an opportunity to drive the 67 car, or maybe we'll be like the Project 91 car, where legends of the sport get an opportunity to drive this car. But do I think Kurt Busch will return in 2023? I think there's a good chance he will. I think Kurt Busch has a very high possibility and chance of making a return in 2023. But I don't think he'll return at least till later in the season. I think it's going to be a little bit of a while before we do see Kurt Busch come back. Don't think it'll be till the second half of the year. And I don't think it's going to be on really fast speed tracks. I would think maybe Darlington could be a possibility. Kurt Busch has said Darlington is a track he would want to win at, so maybe he comes back for the Southern 500. He also said he wants to come back for Watkins Glen. He wants to win there. I know he's won there in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, but he has said that he wants to win there in the Cup Series because he's never won there in the Cup Series. I would think Bristol could be a possible option for him. That could be a track that he goes to. Maybe Martinsville could be an option for him later down the road. I think that Kurt Busch will make a return in 2023 because he's still going to be a 23XI racing, mentoring Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick this season, but he wants to come back and race on the track. He says Herschel McGriff is basically someone he's looking at to kind of see what he wants to do, basically saying that as a mentor and basically someone he's looking at to come back, as Herschel McGriff's made return over the years. But I really think that we'll see Kurt Busch make a return. I think he will return to 2023. The question is now, how many races will he run in 2023? I don't think he'll run till later in the season. Like I said, I think it'll be later down the road and later this year he returns. He's got he's just got to keep, because Denny Hamlin wants him to return. Denny has said he wants to return. I think a lot of drivers in the garage would love to have Kurt Busch back in the series because Kurt Busch is still there and he's going to be with the team because he's really helped 23XI Racing become a great team. And he's going to help the team regardless throughout the year, mentoring both Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick throughout the year. But I really do believe that we're going to see, I think he will make a return. I really think he will, but he still has to be approved from his doctors. It is concerning he's not been approved at this point. But in the meantime, I would also have to imagine at this point that he may do some work in the Fox Sports booth this year. I would have to think that he'll do some Cup Series broadcasts this year, which shockingly Fox has still not announced what their broadcast booth is going to look like at this point for 2023. But I would have to imagine at this point that Kurt Busch is one of the people that will be doing some of the broadcasts there with Fox, probably some of the truck broadcasts as well, which we know there's some changes coming over there. Adam Alexander's likely to be taking over the lead commentary over there. Maybe he does some Xfinity Series broadcasts, and Kurt Busch might do some other racing this year as well if he does get approved, but he still has to be approved to go out there and race, and I do hope in some sort of capacity they can find a way to get him approved because I want to see Kurt Busch back on track. It'd be really great for him to come back, and I really hope that there is a chance that Kurt Busch can make a return here in the not-so-distant future. I hope he gets cleared soon because it is a little concerning that he's not been cleared yet. Hopefully he will get cleared so he can make a return in 2023 to the racetrack. So that is going to be for today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Links description below over that, and comment below your thoughts below on today's video. Do you think Kurt Busch will return to the racetrack in 2023 or not? Let me know in the comments below. And who do you think will drive the 4-car for Stewart Racing in 2024? Let me know in the comments below. Not entirely sure what's going to be on the channel, to be honest with you guys. I might have something special on the channel. Maybe a NASCAR news breaking news story drops tomorrow. Wednesday, there's going to be a NASCAR news video. We've got that test coming up here really, really soon. Thursday, I'm not sure what's going to be out. And then, of course, this weekend is the Rolex 24, which I'm getting really excited for that as well. We'll have race reviews for that. We're getting close to the start of the season, and I'm getting really excited for the season. So anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.